Hola, amigos.
Hola.
You guys know what that means?
Hello.
That's right, it's Spanish. It means hello, friends. In this next video, we're going to learn about a group of explorers that came from Spain and how they came up through California and the San Ramon Valley. When we think of the Western world or the West Coast, you might think of California or the rest of the United States. But actually, the Western world was considered Europe, and most of the explorers in the 1700s came from Europe. In this video, we'll learn about the explorers from the Western world and the founding of Mission San Jose. And we'll see a demonstration of making adobe bricks, the same bricks that were made during Rancho times. So roll up your sleeves, you're gonna get dirty, and vamonos, let's go!
Over 300 years ago, the Spanish explorers had already begun moving north through California, setting up a mission in San Diego and continuing north. The first Spanish expedition through the valley included military men led by Lieutenant Pedro Fages and a padre named Father Juan Crespi, who kept notes in a diary for the trip. They entered the area that is now Danville in April of 1772. Another significant group to enter the San Francisco Bay Area was led by a man named Juan Bautista de Anza. Just around the time of the American Revolution, the Spanish sought to control the Pacific coast from settlement by the British and the Russians. Anza had already arrived in the Bay Area on an exploratory expedition and realized that this land was fertile and great for settlement. His legacy would center on the large amount of people he brought to settle in Northern California. To ensure possession of Northern California, which at the time was called Alta, or Upper California, the Spanish needed to establish a land route from Sonora to Alta California. Sonora was an area that encompassed northern Mexico and the southern areas of what is now Arizona and New Mexico. Leaving with 240 people, half of them under the age of 12, the group led by Anza began the long trek in 1775, bringing with them food supplies that included 6 tons of flour, beans, cornmeal, sugar, and chocolate. Traveling through the desert in winter was not an easy task, and Anza divided the group into 3 expeditions to allow the various watering holes to refill. By January, they were passing through Mission San Gabriel and Mission San Luis Obispo, and by March they entered the San Francisco Bay, establishing sites for the Presidio and the mission. To this day, people still celebrate Juan Bautista de Anza's legacy and the trail that he established. In 1990, Congress acknowledged the significance of the expedition by establishing the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail. As more and more Spanish missionaries arrived, the Spanish influence in the San Ramon Valley grew. Father Juan Crespi, on an early expedition, wrote of his encounters with the Native Americans. He wrote, "We came to 3 villages with some grass houses. As soon as the Indians caught sight of us, they ran away, shouting and panic-stricken." The natives had never seen guns before, let alone men riding on top of horses. Even though they didn't understand each other's language, the 2 cultures merged, and many natives from the San Ramon Valley went to work at the mission. In fact, San Ramon is named for a native who worked at Mission San Jose. His name was Ramon. Let's take a trip to Mission San Jose as it looks today.
Well, Mission San Jose is the 14th of the 21 California missions. It was founded here on this site because of the proximity to the peaceful Ohlone Indians, who were very numerous. We also had great water, and we had land that was very fertile, all of which was very important to the missionaries when they arrived here. Slowly but surely, as the missionaries were able to communicate with them, they couldn't talk their language, of course, but as they communicated with them, they drew them into the church and started teaching them Christianity. The day would start with an early morning rise, prayers, then meals, then some work to be done or schooling for the children, and then more prayers after the work day had finished, before meals, and then again late at night.
Inside are the vestments worn by the padres in the mission. A padre is another name for a priest. Some of the clothes would have been worn for everyday activities, while other vestments, made from the finest materials in the world, would have been used for the Mass.
In the museum, we have a replica of a padre's cell, which was the padre's bedroom. It is very meager in existence. He had a very uncomfortable bed, which had maybe a straw-filled mattress on it and maybe one woolen blanket to keep him warm in the cold winter nights. He also had a desk and a well with ink and a quill pen, and that would be suffice for his room and what he would have. Music was a very important part of life here at Mission San Jose. Father Duran, who was here for about 24 years, actually taught an Ohlone choir and an orchestra that were famous throughout all of the California missions. Well, Father Duran, although he was not a musician himself, was able to draw diagrams depicting the various musical notes, and he taught the Indians using these diagrams. The instruments consisted of violins, flutes, and drums, and the orchestra was very well known for its wonderful music. Today here at Mission San Jose, we have a beautiful replica of the 1809 adobe church that served the Indians that were here. In 1868, a massive earthquake destroyed the church and part of the rest of the mission buildings. Many of the Indian adobes crumbled to the ground as well. So in 1981, we broke ground, and in 1985 completed a historically accurate replica of the original church. We also have the original bell wheel that was rung during the high points of the Mass. They call it the Sanctus wheel, and it was rung by the Indians to signify that we were at that holy place in the Mass. In the days that the church was used for the Ohlone Indians, they would just throw their blankets on the ground and then just kneel on their blankets for services. Today we are much more modern, and we have pews in there for our creature comfort. And because we're sitting on pews, we now can only seat about 275 people in the Mission Church.
On the other side of the church is the old cemetery. Many of the tombstones are from the 1800s, contain the graves of those who worked and lived in the missions. Many of the natives died at the missions. They had never encountered diseases like measles, smallpox, and flu, and their bodies did not know how to fight off the new germs brought from the Western world. Work on the mission involved tending cattle, and most of the cattle grazed throughout areas of the San Ramon Valley.
As I said, the mission cattle were numerous here, and in order to keep our cattle separate from the cattle of other ranchos that sprang up around the area, we had to have a brand. The brand here at Mission San Jose was a giant J, which was put on every animal that belonged to the mission.
The J stood for Saint Joseph, the patron saint of Mission San Jose. For a closer look at branding, we're going to jump ahead more than 100 years and see how farmers branded cattle in the San Ramon Valley. First, the cow was put into a caged pen so that it couldn't run away. Then the spot where the brand would go would be shaved and cleaned. The brands at this time were not put in a fire to heat up, but instead soaked in dry ice, which would make the brand so cold that it would burn a mark into the hide of the cow. Pressing the brand against the cow's hide for up to 60 seconds would leave a lasting mark. This process was painful for the cow, and it would usually jump a bit after the first 15 seconds. Kids, don't try this at home. Mission San Jose also contains artifacts from the Rancho times. In 1810, the Mexican War for Independence began, lasting 10 years. When all was said and done, Mexico now owned California, and the Spanish missionaries fell under Mexican control.
The war between Mexico and Spain, Mexico was then established here at the missions, and they decided that the missions were a little too wealthy, not necessarily in cash, but in material ways. They had cattle, they had a lot of land.
If you were a soldier who had fought for Mexico, you were rewarded with a large amount of land. But in order to get the land, the owner had to create a map of the area and its borders and prove that no one else owned the land with them. These are some examples of the maps that were made. Our valley was divided into two large land grants. North San Ramon Valley went to Mariano Castro and Bartolome Pacheco, though they never lived there because of hostile natives. Jose Amador had the other land grant. Jose Amador had anywhere from 300 to 400 horses. His two-story San Ramon Rancho, made from adobe bricks, was located in what is now Dublin. In 1850, Americans began arriving from the east, and Amador began selling some of his land to them. Soon, with the gold rush, the Americans outnumbered the Mexicans, but those first settlers are still remembered and honored with their names: Amador Valley, Pacheco Pass, Castro Valley, the list goes on. As the years went by, the mission area grew. All of the missions and rancho buildings, and buildings in small Spanish towns, used adobe bricks. Adobe is wet soil that includes dry grass or straw, mixed with sand, and formed into the shape of a large brick. The natives did most of the labor on the Mexican ranchos. Adobe bricks are not hard to make. In fact, we got together a couple of kids to show you how easy it can be. Now, the San Ramon Valley has great dirt for adobe bricks. It's full of clay, which helps the dirt to clump together, making for a better brick. The next ingredient you need is sand, which you can get at most garden stores. The sand and the dirt is transferred into a wheelbarrow, where it will be mixed. For this job, you want 2 shovels of sand for every 1 shovel of dirt. Now comes the hard part, as well as the messy part. Using your hands, mix the dirt with the sand. For this part, you could also dig a bigger hole in the ground and do the mixing with your feet. The mixing part can take a while, so be patient. To test the mixture and see if it's ready, roll it into a ball.
Does it kind of break apart yet?
If the ball falls apart easily, there's too much sand,
still sand
so you should add a little more dirt.
Yeah. A little bit. Ah, it broke.
Yeah, I think we have too much sand. We need a little more mud.
What do you
Or
say?
dirt. I think we should get a little more dirt.
There's no set recipe for it, so play around until you get the right consistency.
Oh, like right there.
If the soil is dry, you should add a little water as well. Testing the soil again,
Yeah, now
the
it's
kids
making
find the
a ball.
adobe balls sticking together
It gets
better.
too wet though.
This is a good
No,
sign.
you think it's good?
Another test is to roll the soil into the size of a thick pencil.
It's thinner than that.
If it doesn't break apart, it's good to use. And don't forget, this is dirt. You may find some surprises.
She's on the thing. Oh my gosh, she's on the thing.
Once your soil is ready, you need some wooden molds that are about 10 inches by 14 inches. You should have your parents make this for you. The molds should be hosed down, because when you make the brick, it needs to slip out easily from the wooden form. You'll see why in a minute.
Push, 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 push. Yeah. Ah!
Start filling the wooden mold with the adobe mix and really pound it in tight.
Yeah.
Add more soil and keep pounding.
Dude, put the red.
Fill in all the corners and smooth out the top. Add just a little more water to make it extra smooth on top.
Okay, now.
You did it last time.
Very gently, while holding down the brick, pull up on the sides of the wooden form. This is why we had to get them wet, so the adobe brick could easily slip out.
There we go.
Repeat the process as many times as you want. And don't forget, you will get dirty. Let the bricks sit in the sun for 3 days, and on the 3rd day, turn them on their sides to continue drying for 1 more
Do you think
week.
it's dry or is it?
Now is a good time to judge how well you made the brick. Was it too wet or too dry?
Kind of wet. It's kind of like almost finished.
Some of our bricks turned out really nice and flat, while others had too much sand and not enough water to hold them together. When adobe bricks are made properly, they're used for building homes. You would have to make thousands of bricks for just one home. And last but not least, have fun, because that's what being a kid is all about.